Peace to you, my friends. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to view the Monet in Chicago exhibit at the Art Institute of Chicago. This beautiful exhibit explores the relationship between the city of Chicago and the famous impressionistic artist Claude Monet. Monet never visited Chicago, but the Art Institute of Chicago owns 33 of his paintings and 13 of his drawings, making it the largest collection of Monet's work outside of Paris. This is largely due to three prominent and wealthy Chicago families that, at the turn of the 20th century, bought up many of Monet's works and eventually bequeathed them to the museum. From very early on in Monet's career, these Chicagoans were very much interested in his work and purchased many of his paintings. So much so that Monet once expressed concern to his dealer that there wouldn't be anything left for Parisians to enjoy in their native country. As you go through the exhibit, you can see the development of Monet's artistic vision. He began simply enough, painting like most painters did at his time. But eventually, you can see his unique style developed to the point that he progresses to painting the same subjects almost obsessively in repeated studies of the same subject. He'd paint the same subject, whether it was his haystack or the bridge over the River Thames or the water lilies of Giverny, over and over and over again, but at different times of the day, to show the effects of light on the subject as the sun moved across the sky from its rising to its setting. But this was more than just a scientific study on color and light. No, for Monet, he was also focused on the beauty of things. Regardless if it was sunny or overcast or if it snowed the night before, beauty was found everywhere. There was always something beautiful for him to paint. And Claude Monet said it best when he wrote, "Every day, I discover more and more beautiful things. It's enough to drive one mad." Perhaps that is why Monet is one of the most beloved and most recognized artists of all times, because of that ability to always see beauty. Today's second reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Philippians seems like an inconsequential selection that can be easily lost upon us. Usually the first reading and the gospel are tied together thematically, so most of our attention is usually placed on them. And today's readings are a good example of that. But today, I would like to focus solely on St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. I'd like to do so because it offers us something important to consider during these troubling times that we find ourselves in. St. Paul wrote this letter while in one of his many imprisonments that he endured during his lifetime. And even though he was writing from prison, and even though he knew that he would die for preaching the gospel, he nonetheless was filled with hope. And we can hear it in today's opening lines. "Brothers and sisters, have no anxiety at all, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. Then the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." These words could have easily been written by St. Paul for us. As we find ourselves angst-ridden by the pandemic, race relations, the economy, and the upcoming election, St. Paul's words offers us hope and comfort that the peace of God will be ours. When we bring our concerns to God in prayer, we literally place them in God's hands. And when we do that, we can feel a lightening of the burden, so to speak, because we aren't carrying the load by ourselves anymore. Yes, it's still a burden. Yes, we still have a hand on them, but now God's hands help us to carry the burden. As a result, the anxiety and the fear lessened within us with the knowledge that we don't have to go it alone. St. Paul goes on further to say, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. With these words, St. Paul helps free our minds of the things that trouble us by redirecting our attention to those things that delight us, things that are true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, and gracious. Now, mind you, St. Paul isn't advocating some type of escapism or a Pollyanna view of the world, which can lull us into a false sense of security. Rather, it's his way of telling us that there is more for us to consider. I know that we can understand this as we look at our own lives today. With so many troubling things going on in our world, it's very easy for us to get stuck on these troubling realities, thereby losing sight of all the good in the world and in our lives that still exists. As difficult and as painful as these last months have been for us, hopefully we can redirect our focus and see just how beautiful life still is. To recognize the preciousness of family and friends, to see how much time that we've been given to spend with them. And hopefully we can redirect our focus also as well on the valuable lessons that we have learned. With the scarcity of available products on store shelves and the limited hours of operation and even limited funds because of our employment status, we may have once thought that we couldn't live without these things, only to recently discover that we've survived quite well without them. None of these words of St. Paul can ever make all the things that cause us anxiety to go away. They can't change the pandemic. They can't improve race relations or the economy or the upcoming election. But they can change us. They can change our anxiety to hope and peace as we place our concerns in God's hands and trust in God. And they can redirect our thoughts on all that is good. With these words of St. Paul written in our hearts, we will be able to discover more and more beautiful things, enough to make us mad.